We are starting to do the notes. We've already done the skill builders. This is 2-1 squares and square roots notes. We're going to start right here. And this is notes where this symbol right here is called the radical or square root symbol. That will indicate to you to take a square root. Okay, we're going to talk about two operations, squaring a number and then taking the square root of a number. Just like adding, and first you add, and then to undo addition you do subtraction, to multiply, to undo multiplication you do division, squaring a number, to undo squaring of a number you take the square root of a number. So when you square a number, you're actually multiplying the number by itself. So this is read as 5 squared, which actually means 5 times 5, and then you do the multiplication, which is 25. So 5 squared is 25. To square a number, you can think of it as finding the area of a square. So if you look down here, there's this square, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a 5 by 5. It is a square. All sides are equal. And so the area, when to find area, you do length times width. So it is 25 units squared because you multiply the 5 times the 5. When you're doing the inverse operation, it's called taking the square root of a number. And finding the square root of a number is the inverse operation of squaring the number. So this is called the square root of 49. So what you're going to do is you're going to think of what number times itself is 49. And that's 7 times 7. So the square root of 49 is 7. To find the square root of a number, you can think of it as given the area, and you need to find the side length of a square. So you have this square down here, and it tells you that the area is 49 square units. You're then going to have in your mind put an x and an x there. And so to find and x's, when there's an x, whatever number you plug in, that's got to be the same number that you plug in for both letters will be the same value. So that is 7 units. Okay, the problems, usually when you're doing these problems, they're going to ask you in a word problem, they could say given the length of a side of a square and ask to find the area. So you're going to have this square, and you're going to have a number here and a number here, and they're going to find area. Well, you're going to just multiply side by side. The other way you can do it is they will ask you given the area of a square and ask to find the side length. So you're going to have this square. You're going to have a number in here, say it's 36. It's going to tell you it's a square, and then it's going to ask to find the side length. So that would be 6 times 6. So the square root of 36 is 6. Okay, so we're going to try some of these squaring and square root numbers. So 8 squared is 8 times 8, which is 64. Some of these you're going to have to memorize at least up through 15 squared. It will make your life a lot easier if you memorized them and could recognize them. Square root of 16 is 4. 10 squared is 10 times 10. 10 times 10, which is 100. Square root of 36, in my mind, I'm thinking what two numbers that are same multiplied by each other give me 36, and that's 6. So 6 is equal to the square root of 36. 19 squared is 19 times 19, and that is 361. Square root of 169 is 13. Number 7, put a star on it because this is one that mathematically has an issue. Notice 7 and 8 look similar, but they're very distinct. Here we're going to follow the rules of order of operations, where I have to do parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division. So there's no parentheses, but I'm going to do my exponent. This 11 is squared, which is 121, and then there is a negative outside in front of it. This negative is not attached to that squared. Except on 8, it says I'm squaring everything inside, which means a negative 11 times a negative 11, which is a positive 121. So the notice is your parentheses make a huge difference. 6 times 6 is 36, and the square root of 361 is 19. If you will look at boxes, these boxes right here, 4 and 5 are stating the inverse operations. So 4 and 9 are inverse operations, and 5 and 10 are inverse operations. Your task is going to be to estimate the square roots. In order to estimate the square roots, you're going to have to know your perfect squares. So I'm just going to go through and list these. You can write them. You can use your calculator to calculate them. This will help speed you up when you recognize them and memorize them. So 1 squared is 1 times 1, which is 1. 2 squared is 2 times 2, which is 4. 3 squared is 3 times 3, which is 9. Anytime I'm going too fast for you, you're more than welcome to pause this, rewind it, catch up. If you have any questions, please send me an email or a message asking me to clarify something. 4 squared is 4 times 4, which is 16. 5 squared is 5 times 5, which is 25. 6 squared is 6 times 6, which is 36. 7 squared is 7 times 7, which is 49. 8 squared is 8 times 8, which is 64. 9 squared is 9 times 9, which is 81. Also, anytime that I'm going through these notes, and if you find a mistake in my notes, please do not hesitate to let me know. Send me a message. Say, hey, you messed up this. I make mistakes every once in a while. 10 squared is 10 times 10, which is 100. 11 squared is 11 times 11, which is 121. 12 squared is 12 times 12, which is 144. 13 squared is 169. Up to 14 squared is 196. 15 squared is 225. 16 squared is 256. 17 squared is 289. 18 squared is 324. 19 squared, we've seen that already, 361. 20 squared is 400. 21 squared is 441. 22 squared is 484. 23 squared is 529. 24 squared is 576, and 25 squared is 625. Bare minimum, you should know up until 15 squared. Recognize them. Okay, so now we're going to do the inverse operations. So we're going to do the square root of 1 equals 1. The square root of 4 equals 2. The square root of 9 equals 3. The square root of 16 equals 4. The square root of 25 equals 5. The square root of 36 equals 6. The square root of 49 equals 7. The square root of 64 equals 8. The square root of 81 equals 9. The square root of 100 equals 10. The square root of 121 equals 11. The square root of 144 equals 12. The square root of 169 equals 13. the square root of 196 equals 14, and so on. Okay, so this is transferring these over here with the square root and the numbers. So here's an interesting thing is we got to estimate some square roots. So what happens when you have the square root of 21? So you have this, and it's not on the list. So what I'm going to do is I am going to look at where the number would fit in. And I'm going to look through here, and I'm going to realize that the square root of 21 would actually be between the square root of 16 and the square root of 25. So what number system, so this says that the square root of 16 is on one side of it, and the square root of 25 is on the other side of it, and the square root of 16 is 4, and the square root of 25 is 5, and so my answer is what happens when you have square root of 21. My best estimate is it's between 4 and 5, and that's a sufficient answer for me. Review of Unit 1, what number system does square root of 21 belong to? Since it's not a perfect square and it is a square root, it is an irrational number. Keep this chart handy because this chart is going to help you until you memorize it or until you're good at putting them in the calculator to get where you can do the next ones.